History and Culture podcasts are a production of PCN, a nonprofit television network. Listeners like you make our programming possible. To learn more about PCN's mission and to support PCN with a donation, visit pcntv.com. This link and others can be found in our show notes. We appreciate your support.
Welcome to PCN's History and Culture podcast. I'm Phil Beckman. This podcast series features interviews exploring Pennsylvania's rich history from the colonial era to industrialization, the Gettysburg Campaign to sports history, and from art to politics and more.
We're joined today by Eric Cook, Executive Director of the Venango County Historical Society. Where in Pennsylvania is Venango County located?
Venango County is in the northwestern corner of the state of Pennsylvania. We're approximately an hour and a half north of the city of Pittsburgh, if you would to snake up the Allegheny River, and we're about an hour south of Erie.
Can you talk a little bit about the founding of this county, how it came about and what year it was founded?
Yeah, Venango County was officially founded in 1800, and it was carved out of the portions of Allegheny and Lycoming County at the time, and organized in 1805, although people had been living here, especially the Native Americans, for much longer.
You work for the county's Historical Society. When did that form?
The Venango County Historical Society took shape in 1957. It was officially recognized in 1959, and between 1959 and 61 incorporated. So we've been around for about 70 years.
And what is the purpose of the Historical Society?
Well, our purpose is to ensure that we preserve our local history. Specifically, we say that it's the acquisition and preservation of materials related to the history of the county of Venango, and to encourage the study and appreciation of that history and to make its resources accessible to the public.
Now, Venango County has a history in oil production. Can you talk a little bit about why they're recognized for that?
Sure. The region here, we like to call ourselves the valley that changed the world, because the roots of the modern oil industry are here in Venango County, as well as spilling into other regional counties, Crawford and Warren. But specifically outside of Titusville on the Venango County line was where Edwin Drake successfully created the first American oil well. Whether or not it was the first oil well is a little bit debated, but we like to think that it was. And so that was in August of 1859. And from that time on, the locus of the global oil industry was here until the early 20th century, by what point, other explorations around the world had spread the oil industry. And but it was pretty much the location for which all of our modern understanding of petroleum refining was developed, production and refining. Who
was Edwin Drake?
Edwin Drake was, at the time that he came to Western Pennsylvania, was a railway employee. He was looking for different work. He was a business contact of George Bissell and Jonathan Eveleth, and they basically recruited him to head up their early oil exploration in the region. Native Americans had been using the oil that naturally seeped to the surface near Oil Creek, which of course gave it its name. And they decided that as well oil was becoming increasingly expensive, and other people had been developing the use of kerosene, including from some petroleum experiments earlier in the 1850s, that Drake would kind of be the front man for their oil exploration project in Venango County. He was based out of Titusville and bordering Crawford County. And then Drake looked at the way that salt wells were produced and came up with a couple of innovations, including putting the drilling equipment within a pipe to be able to bypass some of the contaminants that were slowing down the process, and was able to drill successfully for oil then in 1859.
Can you talk a little bit about how this discovery of oil in the area impacted the region's development?
Sure. Before 1859, Venango County was, like a lot of counties in Western Pennsylvania, primarily focused on agriculture, small amount of mining. There was a fair number of iron furnaces in the county and lumbering, but it was very rural and not particularly wealthy. The sudden development of the oil industry here and the resulting boom as people from all over the eastern United States and across the globe flocked here to try to make a fortune in early oil, significantly transformed the county into a place with some of the highest per capita millionaires in the United States. It left behind a rich legacy of arts, culture, public philanthropy, as well as bringing a lot of heavy industry to the region. So, yeah, in 1859, we were a sleepy sort of backwater community, but by 1879, we were on the front end of a global burgeoning new industry.
Is oil still found and taken from Venango County?
Yes, there is still oil production in the county. It's been greatly reduced since the decline in oil production begins as early as 1911 and accelerated into the 20th century. But there are still operating wells in Venango County. There's still a belief that perhaps as much as 70% of the county's reserves have never really been exploited. But production costs and environmental concerns have brought that production down to much lower numbers than it would have been in the past.
Now, you mentioned Venango County having a boost in population when this oil was found, but they also have a ghost town now called Pit Hole City. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Sure. Pit Hole is probably the most spectacular ghost town we have in terms of its rise and fall, but was certainly not the only one. Petroleum Center was another city that grew up and then disappeared. But Pit Hole is sort of famous, I think, because it was notorious in its own lifetime, and it was such a quick flash in the pan. In January of 1865, on a farm in Venango County, a number of very high-producing wells were sunk, and around them very quickly developed a city. It was incorporated by the fall of that year, November 30th of 1865, and Pit Hole quickly went from a population of 0 to 20,000 in that time. And it had kind of a Wild West atmosphere to it, a lot of shenanigans going on. And then by 1870, the population was down to 237. So within 5 years, it has perhaps the third largest population of a community in Pennsylvania to almost nothing. And because the wells that were in Pit Hole quickly, they were drilling too close together, and they were probably all pulling from the same source, and so very quickly they began to run out.
Are there any other major industries in the county besides oil?
Yes, we still have, as a byproduct of oil over the years, first came oil refining and transportation, but then came a lot of tool and die work to support the oil industry. And even though the oil industry is mostly gone from the region, except for the remaining wells in operation, there's still a lot of tool and die work in our region. There's still some light manufacturing. And of course, we have the service industry and retail that all communities have.
Let's get into the specifics of some of the collections that the Historical Society has. There's one titled the Business and Industry Collection. Could you talk about what's in that?
Sure. We have a number of journals and ledgers and, of course, photographs and artifacts from street signs from businesses to a lot of corporate photographs and documents put together by the different oil companies and the allied industries that supported them. We also had some heavy manufacturing, like Chicago Pneumatic Tool was in our region, and Joy Manufacturing, which produced equipment for coal mining, especially in Western Pennsylvania. So a lot of those company records, photographs, advertising memorabilia, those are in our collection, as well as local retail.
The Historical Society also has a collection around the military. Could you talk about what's in that collection?
Sure. We have a collection of military memorabilia and artifacts from former servicemen and women who are from our county. It contains everything from Civil War diaries and Bibles that were carried, some with really fascinating notations, to photographs. We have collections of letters that were written home from soldiers serving overseas in World War I and World War II, photographs and uniforms of men and women from the Civil War on, and especially focusing on the Spanish-American War, World War I and World War II. We have uniforms, medals, and sometimes the sort of souvenirs and artifacts that people brought back from the military and wanted to preserve on the home front, as well as photographs of heavy industry, supporting the troops in our region during World War I and II.
Walk us through the process on how these collections are created and how they're preserved.
Well, we accept donations. Of course, people often, especially right now, a lot of family collections are coming to us as well as business collections. People bring them to us. We put feelers out in the community. When items arrive, we evaluate them. Of course, what we're looking for are things that have a deep connection to our county and the surrounding communities. And then, of course, after that comes Western Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the United States. We evaluate them. If they're a session, we keep them. We bring them into the collection. Depending on what they are, we have a climate control archive for documents and photographs. We digitize. We've just started a major digitization process to hopefully eventually make all of our collection available online as far as we can. And then we maintain a house museum here in Franklin, Pennsylvania, the Venango County seat. And so then items are put on display here. And we've just entered into a new partnership with the Borough of Emlenton, which has a museum there. We'll be helping them. And we partner with other local museums, such as the Oil City Museum, or the Venango, in Oil City, the Venango Museum of Art, Science, and Industry, as well as local. We have the Ben's Antique Music World, and there are other institutions. And we Drake's Well, of course, the state institution that preserves the location of Edwin Drake's first oil well. So we work together to put together exhibits here at our house museum in Franklin, but also to share them with other community assets in the region.
Can you talk a bit about that house museum? Who significantly owned the home?
Well, the home was begun in 1859 by a man named Solomon Ullman, who was the first Jewish rabbi and one of the first Jewish people to settle in Venango County. He did not actually live here, though. His businesses and his marriage broke up. The house eventually became the property of George Egbert, and Dr. Egbert was one of the most important early oil producers in the region. He had a well at Petroleum Center, and he was a doctor from originally from Mercer County, came to Venango County. And after the Civil War broke out, he volunteered as a surgeon, but the battlefield horrors he saw made him step back and retire from medicine actively, and he instead invested himself in the community as a philanthropist and also as a businessman. And so the Egberts lived here from 1868 until 1898. The house then came into the ownership of William J. Mullins, who was one of the first graduates of MIT, who was a Pittsburgher who came here to work in the oil refineries, was able to retire very early from business, and also spent the rest of his life working in philanthropy and also the fine arts. He was an excellent photographer. And so his family owned this house from 1898, passed through his daughter and granddaughter till 2009, when it became our museum.
Can you talk about what the community is like currently in Venango County?
Yeah, Venango County is predominantly a rural community. We have two cities. We have Oil City and Franklin. The county is spectacular in terms of its beauty. The Allegheny River Valley and the Oil Creek and the French Creek River valleys come through here, and it's just a spectacular place. The people are friendly. We have a lot of arts, especially through Oil City. There's a lot of fine arts and craft art and visual art. We have very active chambers of commerce. We still have a very healthy Main Street in Franklin, Pennsylvania. We're nicknamed America's Victorian City. And so between our two largest communities and the small rural communities that surround us, it's an amazingly active and vibrant place.
What are some things about Venango County that make it unique compared to other counties in Pennsylvania?
Well, of course, our history with the oil industry is probably the number one, as we've touched on that. It certainly sets us apart. We have, as a result of that, a lot of institutions that have remained healthy where other communities have struggled because many of the people who were involved in that early phase of the oil industry left behind financial legacies that have supported all kinds of community life, some of it 100, 150 years later. So that's been a great blessing to us as a community. And we also have attracted a lot of people who've been moving back to the area and moving into the area because of the beautiful architecture, especially is another one of our assets, I would say, besides our regional natural beauty of the landscape and the flora and fauna, which is shared with much of Western Pennsylvania. But the wealth of the oil industry meant that we have an abundance of amazing architecture from the period 1860 to about 1920 or 1930.
Lastly, how can people learn more about your county?
They can visit the county website to begin with, venangocounty.pa.gov. BeHereVenango.org is one of our chamber. We have two chambers, Franklin and the Venango Chamber, both do excellent work. The Venango Chamber also has its own website. ExploreVenango.com is another great resource. Lots of wonderful places where you can find all of the events and activities that are going on in our region.
We've been speaking with Eric Cook, Executive Director of the Venango County Historical Society. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Listeners like you make PCN programming possible. Full episodes of PCN's history and culture content, like the interview you just heard, are available to stream with the PCN Select app. Explore other documentary programs, event coverage, and a lot more. To learn more about PCN's mission and to support PCN with a donation, visit PCNTV.com. This link and others can be found in our show notes. We appreciate your support.